Thanks for tuning in to the HR Uprising podcast. I'm your host, Lucinda. The HR Uprising is focused on helping forward-thinking people professionals deliver real lasting value in their organisations. I'm a chartered psychologist, speaker and trainer, and recently authored the best-selling business book, How to Be a Change Superhero. My day job is founder and CEO of software and training business Actus. This gives me the opportunity to work with other businesses like yours. We are focused on building a better workplace for people wherever they are located, with the help of our performance, learning and talent management software and our training and consultancy services. Every week on the podcast, I will be covering different topics and challenges, joined by relevant experts and real-life people professionals. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoy and get value from this week's episode. Hello and welcome to this week's HR Uprising podcast. And I'm excited to talk in this new year about a topic that I think we all need to focus in on, which is all about health, performance, well-being. How do we map all those things together, and how do we as HR professionals help people to do that? And I'm delighted to have Nick Thomas and Ollie Martin here, who are experts in this sphere. We're going to talk about the terms uncommon sense and various aspects there in terms of how we can help people to look after themselves, and maybe also as HR professionals take a leaf out of these books as well. So Ollie and Nick, thank you so much for joining me today. Would you like to just position your businesses a little bit so that you can explain who you are for the audience?
Great. Yeah, Lucinda, thanks first of all so much for asking us on the podcast. Real privilege to be on. Ollie, if I maybe just sort of go first, and then I'll let you sort of follow on and tell everybody the interesting stuff. So yeah, my name's Nick Thomas. Got a background in the corporate insurance world, working in major insurance brokers for many years. In sales and sales leadership positions primarily. So I've got experience of working for major global organizations and in a corporate sort of high pressure environment. I then experienced a sort of period of a chronic health condition for a number of years, which obviously took me in a slightly different direction. And as I sort of manufactured my own recovery in that area, I learned a huge amount. And that, as I say, took me very much down a slightly different route. So became a widely qualified coach, both in terms of sort of corporate and exec and life coaching, but also, and through knowing Ollie as well, also into that kind of health, holistic lifestyle, exercise coaching sort of area. And then got involved coaching at a corporate level and with individuals as well. And in recent years, I set up a business called Nick Thomas and Associates, which provides training and coaching solutions, focusing in on my old area, the insurance area, but also more widely to financial services and beyond, and looking at a range of areas from sales, communication skills, etc., technical insurance, customer service, leadership management, and also in this area, obviously, of sort of that's so key of performance, health, and resilience as well. And that's where my connection with Ollie comes in.
Okay, I was going to say, so it sounds like a bit of a spur off all of those things. So this is making it more holistic as opposed to old school, where you and I have both been involved in things like sales training, things like that. Actually, it's much of a broader look at this way of working.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, Lucinda. In the work I try and do as well within the sales piece, whether I'm just delivering on sales or corporate areas as well, I bring in quite a lot of stuff that I know through my coaching expertise and through working with Ollie as well, that hopefully sort of helps in that. So bringing in, mindset and sort of motivation and these sort of areas as well. So yeah, being able to cross sort of fertilize those areas is really useful, I think.
Great. Ollie, how do you fit into this partnership?
Hi. Thanks for inviting me along. Yes, I'm Ollie Martin. I'm a human performance consultant and a health coach. I've been doing this over 20 years. My background is sports science and professional sport, both as a rugby player and in management. But really, I've looked at how we perform and the way we perform is to build health so we can perform better. So I have a very sort of wide range of clients who I help, right from couch potatoes to elite athletes and obviously corporate executives. And I sort of help Nick. I've worked with Nick, and he's worked with me, and I run his corporate wellbeing seminars and team building and days, corporate wellness days for him.
So I think it's quite appropriate that we're having this conversation in January when lots of us have got lots of resolutions that we might want to enact. And I guess it's a bit different, isn't it? So you have got things like corporate wellness days, but we at some point we'll have to talk about how we can motivate people to look after themselves with lots and lots of people still working remotely. But I mean, in terms of I guess the stats, Ollie, in terms of what you've discovered and the sort of typical things that you'd cover in a seminar, what's the key messages that you would be challenging people with?
Yeah, first of all, I have an uncommon sense approach. That's what I've sort of branded how I help people. And a common sense approach says, it's January, right? We have a New Year's resolution. We're going to do this, and this, but we've forgotten that actually we have a life as well, and we can't fit everything else in. So what I found is people sort of common sense, it should be obvious health. We need to, exercise more, eat less, low fat, low cal. We need to feel the burn, all this sort of thing. But with this advice, actually, the nation is getting fatter and unhealthier. Government figures are extraordinary. There's £6.1 billion each year spent on obesity-related conditions. 2/3 of us are overweight, obese, and it's also really a big cause. I think obesity is the second biggest cause of cancer. And cancer is the second highest cause of death after heart disease. So, in terms of the stats, a common sense, the New Year's resolution sense approach doesn't work. So I've looked to develop an uncommon sense approach, which is more of a holistic approach.
Okay, so because I mean, I can see that. Yeah, as we said, we talked off camera, didn't we? That the thing about common sense is it isn't actually all that common, and I'd be interested to hear more about your more holistic approach. I was also just thinking, I don't know if this is too early to know this, it's more of a theoretical question. Over the last 3 years, more and more of us haven't had to exercise by, I think of the days when I used to go into London 3 years ago, and I would do 15,000 steps just by getting around on the tube and things like that. So unless now in fairness, I have incorporated into my day a dog walk first thing in the morning, and I do still get active, but I've had to create those new habits. And I am conscious that lots of us, it's almost we might be even more glued to our desks and chairs at the moment with this remote working, even though in theory we've got more freedom. Have you got any comments on that? Have you noticed anything anecdotally or stats on
that? Definitely. So what we find is daily movement is so important. As we're talking about, we're going into sort of more detail, but we find that you've got mega fit people. They might go for a big run in the morning and get a huge amount of steps even. But if you then sit at your desk or sit at your screen for 8 hours solid, 4 hours solid, some people even 12 hours solid, we find that actually you'd be better off moving every hour than you would going for that big hard run. Really? Now, this should be really good news for individuals who don't like exercise. It should be really good news for HR directors and people that want to help maybe the least fit people in their organization. Because one of our comments, Nick, we've talked about quite a lot, is I come from a professional sport background. Nick's a big sportsman. There's a tendency for a lot of interventions in health and sport to appeal to the fit people. Well, actually, they're the people you don't want to appeal to so much, because they're the ones who are going to be healthier anyway. So what we really look at, and what I look at, and I, as I say, I've trained with all sorts of people completely obese on a regular basis. We look at how we can make people healthier, and that could be the least fit people. So, and I'll go on a little bit, but this, so we look at moving your body every hour. Your heart's the size of a fist. It pumps 7,200 litres a day. how it gets help, and it does it your whole lifetime, how it gets help is by movement. If you don't move, if you're sedentary, and I think Nick, I remember talking about stats, actually sedentary lifestyle is worse than smoking now, and there's some stats on that. But by moving, there's this process where the muscles squeeze the blood vessels called vasoconstriction, and that helps the blood get back to your heart. So that's a big roundabout way of saying moving your body every hour. So getting up every hour, going to the person in the next door office, going down the stairs. If you're working from home, how can you build movement snacks into your day? And that's a little buzzword we got.
Yeah,
there,
real
isn't
snacks.
It? We want to have movement snacks, and this builds up. The sum is worth more than the individuals.
Okay, I like that, Tim.
Sorry, just coming in, Lucinda, as well. You mentioned about people doing less during lockdown, etc. And that was really interesting, wasn't it? Because I think a lot of us, particularly in that first lockdown where the weather was beautiful, etc., and some of us are lucky enough to live in fantastic areas, countryside and everything, out on the bike, out walking, people out running, etc. You think, oh, it's fantastic. People are getting loads more exercise. Actually, the research subsequently showed that people were moving less. Because yes, as Ollie alluded to, the people who are into movement and exercise, it's a natural part of their life and they do it. But if you're actually sat at home and you're being told you can only go out for an hour or whatever it was, people were actually moving less because, as you said, they weren't having that organic movement that sort of fitted into the day. And I think Ollie probably say that that's just a progression from what's been happening throughout sort of history, really, where cavemen didn't used to exercise in inverted commas. They used to lift things, they used to run, they used to track food, etc. They were getting their movement in as part of their everyday life. It's only relatively recently we set aside these periods to do exercise in inverted commas.
Yeah, and it is something you've got to build a habit in. I think we've all had the experience, whereas you sit down at your desk at 8 o'clock in the morning, you are unlikely to move from it. So I find that you've got to have done something physical, or educate these snacks, create these little habits. It's just occurring to me, some businesses that I work with do 55-minute meetings as default in their things, whether it's little things like that, where, that is at least that break to go and have 5 minutes, whether it's just walking up and down the stairs, get yourself a glass of water or something, just to get up and move, is the key. Otherwise, it's very easy to stay glued there. And I suppose, Nick, going forwards with that, I know that our audience out there totally, there's lots of people who are aware of the importance of well-being overall. But you're all about performance, aren't you? Do you want to explain a little bit more about how this all links to people's performance, stress, all of this, why it's all quite key?
Of course, and we approach it from both angles, Lucinda. So we do talk, about the health aspect, but also aspects as well that feed directly into performance. But I think, your audience will know as well as anybody the link between health and absenteeism and presenteeism and productivity. It's well established and self-evident. So just a couple of bits of research there, but research by Westfield Health showed that absenteeism cost the UK £14 billion in 2020. 14 billion. 36% of employees said their workplace productivity had been affected by mental health issues every single week. Presenteeism, long established, it's cost the UK economy approximately 15 billion. So, that's that aspect, isn't it, of people being at work, whether they're working at home or working in the office, but because they're not very well or they've got mental health issues or whatever it is, they're not functioning anything close to their optimum. So, and in fact, in a more recent report, CIPD's Health and Wellbeing at Work report in April 2019 found that 80% of British employees continue to work when unwell. That obviously feeds directly into that presenteeism piece. So there's a massive link there between health and performance, and also cost to businesses and cost to the economy, etc. And we know, I'm sure many people will have heard of Jim Loehr, the performance psychologist, and his work on corporate athlete and ideal performance pyramid goes back decades to the 90s. And he showed that to perform optimally, we need to build physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual capacity. Now, people get off-put by spiritual because it sounds a bit woo-woo to some, but that's really just working in line with your meaning and purpose and your values, because that really ignites passion for work, and it gives you that sustainable sort of performance that the likes of Angela Duckworth in her research and her book Grit talk about, that ability to perform over a long period of time. So a lot of this stuff has been well known for quite a period of time, but without wishing to sound critical, I think businesses, with the exception of things like corporate gyms, which feed into what Ollie was talking around, making the healthier or giving them access, with the exception of those sort of aspects, they've been slow to respond. But I think COVID lockdowns and remote working have been a real tipping point. Certainly, I know from speaking to you, that's created, much more sort of immediacy for corporates in terms of sort of trying to deal with this stuff. We knew there was chronic stress in the workplace already, but that's been exacerbated, and various pieces of research there have, some quite startling figures around people's well-being, etc. So I can talk about that in more detail if you want.
But I can see Ollie's also ready to come in. I'm just still reading.
Yeah, I think some really important. I'm still reading
going back decades to the 90s, and Nick making us all feel really old.
I was very young at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So sorry, Ollie, what were you going to come in with?
That's okay. So some really important points there. But when we're looking at performance, we're looking for a balance of stresses. And we often hear the word stress and think of it as a bad thing. But stress is not a good thing, not a bad thing. Actually, stress helps us perform at the highest level. And that's what an athlete's looking to produce. And that's what a corporate athlete wants to produce as well. You want to get in the zone and perform at the highest level at the right time. So it's understanding stress. One of the concepts, going back a little bit to the uncommon sense approach, is that we've evolved over 4 million years, but our environment is near identical. Our bodies are near identical. We evolve 0.01% every 100,000 years. So our bodies are pretty much identical to they were when we were cavemen and cavewomen, but our environment is now very different. So an understanding of what our bodies are designed for and how it responds to stress and what is stress is really important. So a couple of points here. The body treats all stress the same, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, whether it's thermal, nutritional, electromagnetic. The body treats stress as the same. So it all comes out of the same pot. So if you're very mentally stressed, you say, well, I would need to go for a run because that de-stresses me. That can also add to being an extra stress on the body. So a little bit of awareness on that. Nick, you talked about chronic stresses, so long-term stresses. Our bodies are not well designed for long-term stress. They are designed for really acute, short, sharp stresses. And that's really important. We have this autonomic nervous system where we have our parasympathetic nervous system and our sympathetic nervous system. And this is the fight-flight response. We need to use that to advantage. And what we're finding is, you think we've only had electricity 100 years or so, and as I say, we evolved 0.01% every 100,000 years. An idea of let's use the acute stresses, so short, sharp stress, but then let's have lots of recovery afterwards. So how do we build performance? We balance the stresses, and in particular, we focus on short, sharp stress and lots of recovery. So we look at sleep, we look at time out, we look at ways to build energy. So to cut along, we build health to create the performance.
Yeah.
Can I just understand those a bit more though, because that's really interesting. So the point you're saying is at the start so even when we think we are going out for a run or doing something that's good for us, if we went and did exercise, you're saying that actually that's also viewed as a stressor by our body in theory?
Yeah, and this is where uncommon sense comes into common sense. I'll give you the example. It's January, we've eaten lots, we've had everything, lots of extra mince pies. So you want to lose weight. So let's say you go and see a weight loss person, or you go the shakes, or you go to the gym. The first thing they're going to say to you, okay, you need to lose weight, you need to exercise more, and you need to cut your calories. You need a low-calorie diet. However, what I'm saying is actually the weight gain is more you've got your balance of stresses wrong.
Okay.
So the weight gain is a symptom that you've had too much stress, not enough rest and repair, or vice versa. You're out of balance. It's hard to show. I normally use pictures and depictions to talk about that. But actually, you might get short-term benefits from a low-calorie diet and exercising more. But actually, those increase the stress on your body. So you will actually find the long-term benefits. You will put the weight back on, and you will probably put back on more. And there's a lot of evidence about that the body tries every mechanism to put the weight back on before. So an understanding of what our body is designed for and the situation they're in now. If you reduce calories, you're actually giving your body less nutrition. So it's going to store food that it gets as fat, because it's worried that it's not getting a regular source. Also, if you're exercising a lot, the body's in a stress response. So again, it thinks, well, I don't want to waste too much energy. I'm going to make you feel lethargic. Oh, when you haven't eaten much, you're going to be even more lethargic. So you can use willpower to get you off the couch. I'm guessing 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, gets to the end of January. And guess what? Attendance figures in gyms are dramatically, they fall off a cliff come February.
So is that you're saying it's actually trying to, but you're saying you're almost excessively, so because otherwise I can't see a way through what you're saying there. If you're saying you can't exercise and you can't not eat because you're dropping your nutrition, you're exercising, is that because you're talking about doing something a little bit more excessive? Whereas if you can you raise your tolerance to say low level stressors, going back to your movement thing, your movement snacks or whatever, so that you're active and you're burning? So, because I'm not quite seeing how there's an upside or a happy story here on that one.
I suppose the main point is saying in January, the idea of calories in, calories out doesn't work. So forget what you think you know about that, and understand what our bodies are designed for. They're designed to be survival tools. So if you exercise too much and reduce calories, they won't work properly. What I'm saying is, for high performance over a long period of time, you need to build health. How do we build health? So we eat nourishing food.
So it's all about long game, basically. It's a long game.
The long game. But if you eat food that's right for you, right for your body, it gives you the right nutrients, do you think you're going to overeat?
In theory, you shouldn't feel hungry, in theory, right, if you're eating those things.
Exactly. And it takes time and gets the balance right. If you move your body in a way that it's designed to, do you think you're going to get injured? Do you think you're going to recover away from it? Yes, it's going to be more natural. It's going to be a more natural approach. So rather than punishing your body for the excesses over Christmas, I'm saying work with it for health and performance. So you want to move your body every day, and you want to move it in a way that's aligned with your evolutionary heritage. So we talked about short, sharp stressors. So let's do some really high intensity work, and then let's do lots of low intensity movement. Food we talked about a bit. Let's I joked earlier, anything that says low cal, low fat, healthy choice, I would avoid it with a barge pole. Anything that has something that tells you it's healthy, that's a big warning sign that it's an absolute rubbish for you. So we want to eat nourishing food. So those are two of my biggest points.
We're talking real food there, Ollie, aren't we?
Yeah, unprocessed.
Food as opposed to food products, I know, is one of your favourite comments.
Yeah, and what is a food? What is a food product? Yeah, real food comes in its whole natural form. A food product has an ingredients list or packaging or marketing.
Agreed. And just maybe, I don't know if this is in your pad, Nick, finally on this stress thing, so now I've just drilled in on this. We've talked about stressing in terms of exercise and eating and things. What about stress in terms of work style? So is it something about us not sitting, or really working really into? We could work in short, sharp Pomodoro type things, then take a break. Is there something here where we could, translate this into how we work if we're at a computer, say?
Absolutely. No, I think what Ollie's been talking about from a physical health perspective, etc. It's a direct analogy through to work. So, the typical analogy we talk about, and Ollie can talk about this much more detail than I can, but if you're looking to get fit, to build muscle in a gym, You do intense work, you lift weights, whatever it is, you're not building the muscle while you're doing that. That's the stressor. Okay, that's the stressor. We don't build muscle when we're lifting weights. We're actually tearing and damaging muscle fibers during that time. We build muscle because when we rest, then the recovery, the muscles recover, and they recover so that they're stronger than they were before, bigger than they were before, etc. So that's that whole aspect. It's the same as with the physical aspect. It's about building in periods of stress with recovery. And in fact, you go back to the corporate athlete, they talk about oscillation between stress and then having rituals to recover. So we know that we work much better in short periods of time. There's something called the Pomodoro effect. You work for 25, 40 minutes at a very, very high level. Ideally, we get into a kind of flow type state, if people are familiar with that, where we're working at a really optimum high level. But that performance starts to drop off after a period of time. So we start to get diminishing sort of marginal returns, if you like. So we need to finish that task, stop, take a short break. You don't need to take like half an hour like my son does when he thinks he's done 20 minutes, because that doesn't work. That's too much rest. But you can then start to build in some of the things that, this is where this all fits together. Start to build in some of the things that Ollie talks about. So you're doing 45 minutes, really highly productive sort of cognitive work or whatever it is. 2 or 3 minutes break. Do some breathing squats, for example, which is a little movement snack. Do some breathing. Get out. If you can get outside and you're in nature, get out in nature for a couple of minutes, maybe. Play with your dog for a couple of minutes. These are like healthy activities that really help you to recover, so that when you then go back, you can go back to that optimum level of performance again, as opposed to what most people do. They go on social media, look at their phone. We know about the damages to performance from media multitasking. There's a lot of research around it. We know what it does to brainwave patterns. It does exactly the opposite of getting us into a flow state. So the comparison is pretty direct, really. Whatever we're talking about, whether it's physical performance, whatever area we're talking about, or work in an office space, cognitive environment, the same is true. And I mean, there's so much to all of this stuff, but also movement. One of the things fairly well established now is that actually movement helps our cognitive performance. So we can literally generate new brain cells through moving. So there's a lot of benefit to it, and it's a great recovery tool as well.
I think I always say to people, 50% of the benefits of exercise and movement are mental health benefits, are cognitive benefits. So you're getting more bang for your buck.
And I actually think there's a whole thing about anxiety and long-term, depression and things like that. People preventing those things, especially if you get to move and you get outside. And interesting, Nick, you sort of said people get put off by the spiritual thing of the woo-woo aspect of it. But Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, he talks about 4 aspects of renewal, of one, which spiritual is one of them. And I always think that's something. It could be being out in nature. It could be doing yoga. It doesn't have to be religious as such. It's about something which is woven in.
Absolutely. I think that's something Brits, the Americans, I think, are quite comfortable talking about spiritual. The Brits, it's not a word that we sort of resonate so much with. So it's more about finding that meaning and purpose.
Yeah. And so there's more physical things that we can do, I'm guessing, in terms of the top tips. I know you've talked a little bit about eat food, real food, not food products, move your body, have your movement snacks. Are there any other things that you would recommend for us to incorporate, or as HR professionals to maybe encourage others to incorporate into their day?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, from an individual point of view, there's 6 things that if you do these 6 things each and every day, they all interlinked. They all help each other. We've talked about a lot of them already. They'll come in, but if I give you the 6 bullet points, you want to breathe deeply. Breathe in through your nose, and your tummy should come out. That filters the air. Breathing in through your nose gets your tummy moving. It's good core training, but fundamentally it sends you into that rest and repair, calmer state. So breathing. You think we can go 3 weeks without food, 3 minutes without 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, only 3 minutes without breath. So that's number 1 at the list, if you can breathe better. So if you are having 55-minute meetings or 45-minute meetings, do some breathing in between that. So that's number 1. Number 2, eat nourishing food, we've talked about. Number 3, move your body every day. Number 4, drink water. Now, I've got a formula here. You drink the amount of water in litres, which is your body weight in kilograms, times 0.033 litres a day. So for me, that's about 4 litres a day. That might sound quite a lot, but we're very dehydrated. Also, screens and electromagnetic radiation, they're thought to dehydrate us more. So drinking water. That was number 4. I think I'll lose count here. Sleep, 8 hours sleep a night, really important. Probably one of the most important things is just to increase the quality and amount of sleep. And then number 6 is the positive solutions. What we focus on expands. So this is the mental aspect as well. So you want to breathe deeply. You want to eat nourishing food, move your body every day, drink water, get 8 hours sleep, and have positive solutions. What you focus on expands.
Okay, great. And again, that's links back into you saying your point, actually, Nick, about the if you go on to things like social media, often you're focusing on really negative stuff or news or things like that, and that becomes dominant, whereas actually you can focus on more positive stuff. So it's focusing where you're putting your attention, you're saying there, in terms of it expanding positive.
Yeah. Absolutely links with, if anybody's familiar with the positive psychology movement. I mean, Sean Akel's book, The Happiness Advantage, kind of really encapsulates some of this. If you focus, we traditionally think, oh, work hard, make lots of money, be happy. He flips that on his head, be happy. And when I say be happy, he's talking about having positive emotions. So being positive, because actually it releases sort of feel-good hormones, etc. It literally broadens our sort of field of vision, so we have more options. We have more, we're more creative. We have more options available to us, and we're therefore got a better chance to perform at a high level. So he flips that on his head and say, if you've got positive emotions, you will be successful as a result. So absolutely, doesn't mean, and listen, what we're not saying here, if any therapists are listening, is push negative emotions aside, push them down. Absolutely got to deal with them. They're there for a reason. They can have they can have strong benefits, obviously. But if we generally adopt a positive mindset, as Ollie says, then we're more likely, we tend to move towards what we focus on, as he was saying. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Okay, so go on, Ollie, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And you're talking about what can we do for motivation? What can we do for this? And we've touched on this idea of purpose, what your purpose is, and talk about dreams and legacies and having that. And what that is about is having the emotion, which is basically the unconscious mind, which is most of your mind. So if you have the emotion of what you actually want to happen in work, in life, in family, it's the emotion that attracts the circumstance towards you. So if you're planning to do something healthy or plan to change your lifestyle, you actually want to create the thoughts and the feelings of that first, and then that attracts it towards you. And that's a really important point. The old school of goals and this sort of thing doesn't work as well as creating the mindset to attract what you want into your life.
And there's some really, I don't know whether you've got any sort of remuneration experts on the call as well, Lucinda, but it's really interesting research you're probably familiar with now around the different, about how extrinsic and intrinsic motivation affects us, and the real power of intrinsic motivation. As distinct from extrinsic, where we still seem to be in a world where people are driven by carrot or stick, but actually research showing that for cognitive and creative tasks, actually that negatively affects creativity, as opposed to intrinsic motivation, which actually benefits it.
Agreed. So I guess going into thinking about this from our audience point of view, and maybe start bringing this all together, what would you suggest, what recommendations have you got for HR and organisations more generally to support health and performance for people?
Yeah, well, again, with that same theory, we'll want to have, rather than lots of sort of things in the middle, we have a big idea, I would say, for a company. So we're looking at the macro side, and then we look at some micro side as well. So really, we're looking at setting a culture for long-term health and well-being. So that can start at the top, it could start at the bottom. But really, the idea of what can we do to set this culture? Are people having a lunch break? a huge area which I don't know about, but obviously you're better at that. But about policy and how to help people. Nick, come in there.
Yeah, Ollie, just coming in on that, the aspect of setting culture so often can be top down, and I think we've got a slightly different scenario, Lucinda, now, haven't we? Whereas 3 years ago, pretty much everybody was in the office. Now, something can be really valuable there. I remember the story of, I think it was the Amex chief exec, and he used to deliberately at lunchtime put his gym gear on, walk through every floor on his way to the gym, and be pretty obvious in terms of showing everybody that that's what he was doing. And when we went virtual, when everybody was going remote, one of the things I was talking to people about was making sure early doors as a leader, you're speaking to your people and you're setting expectations around, how we communicate, what hours we're allowed to send emails, what hours people are expected to reply to emails, etc. Because we know that people feel obligated almost, even if they receive an email at 11 o'clock at night. So setting those parameters correctly, particularly for the hybrid working environment. If you are working at home, etc., stuff like because people do tend to, we can't separate. There's that aspect of work-life separation, and we know that has a real impact on mental well-being, the ability to separate work and life. So how do you do that if you haven't got that commute to work, if you haven't got those physical aspects that separate things? And you've got to create a routine. So rather than stay in your pajamas and walk 3 steps down from your bedroom to your office, make sure you're building in, whether it's whether you're going for a walk before work, maybe as if you're walking to the station, changing into some clothes where you feel like you're working, having a shower, doing a workout, whatever it does that signals psychologically. And there's research around this psychological separation piece that signals to you that you're switching on, and then at the end of the day, that you're switching off again. So I think that's really important to make sure you build that in, because it's so easy to blur those lines. And also it's great, really important to be present for present for work, but also present for your family, etc. So rather than 8 o'clock at night when you should be talking to your kids or whatever, and you're still thinking and looking at your emails, that's, you've got to set some sort of delineation, some barrier, so some boundaries, so that you're sort of giving your body a signal that it's time to switch off.
So actually having some time to think about that and write it down is really important. But on the other side, I'd say, Nick, a lot of my ideas for what you're going to do in the office, actually, if you're working from home, I always say it's a good idea if you're a company, to have showers in the office so people can exercise or go outside in the daytime. Lucinda, you talked about outside and daylight, and we haven't really touched on that. One of the best things you can do is to get outside in the daylight. We spend too much time outdoors. Even in January, even this time of year, it's always brighter outside. So if it is raining, if people are walking, running to work, cycling, office showers are good. If you're working from home, you've got that. Other ideas, digestion.
Come in there. There's a link, isn't there, between if you get outside and your body senses sunlight during the middle of the day, then it kind of sets your circadian clock, doesn't it? Isn't that right?
Yeah, so that's one of the best things we can do for sleep, is to get outside at midday, because the daylight goes to the back of your retina, and when your deep primal brain knows when it's midday, it also knows when it's midnight, so you're going to sleep better.
Does it only work at midday?
Well, especially this time of year, you don't get much light, but it's, if any daylight you can get, in the northern hemisphere, I always say get out between 12 and 2 this time of year. Physically out in nature, spending time decharging. Please, if you can, put your phone on airplane mode or something. I know people like to check everything. Another one of my really big points, I'm going to hog it now, is to get on the floor. We've talked about, desks, rising desks, up, standing desks, but actually reconnecting with the floor is a really important thing to do. Easier to do this when it's at home, but maybe offices can look at stretching spaces to help rebalance the body, and time for a bit of quiet time, mental time out as well, to help digestion after lunch as well.
So all of those things, I mean, we were talking about many of those things during lockdown. I think people were maybe more aware of doing those things during lockdown because it was an unusual time. It was that we were doing these things, and they were sort of people more conscious of it. What occurs to me, though, is the people listening to this, whether they're HR or not regular people working there, is that the people who are active are probably still active, and the people who are sporty are the ones out doing stuff at the start and end of the day. Any bright ideas for how someone, because ultimately it's the majority, you know, what are the people who really have become sedentary or were always sedentary and now are not even getting the commute? Any bright ideas as to how you can take those along? Because presumably they've got the most benefit to be had.
Yes, exactly. And that's really what comes down to our educational process. As people that sort of know a lot about all sorts of exercise, we know the most simplest, easiest things you can do to make the most difference. Now, often that's personal to the individual. So that's where sort of our Uncommon Sense educational program comes in. And it also gives tools for people to design their own movement program in line with a playful attitude. We'll get a bit more detail here, but if exercise isn't fun, I alluded to get injured, but if it's fun and playful and it's going to work, you're going to do more of it. So we very much look at motivation. That's on the movement side, but we've alluded on the nutritional side as well. If you're eating the food that's right for your individual biochemistry, then you're going to make the better options. Then when you link that with your purpose. So yeah, diets don't have to be unpleasant. Exercise should be fun, certainly not unpleasant. Living more towards your dream life and your purpose and your values. That's what really makes the difference for people. And it's not quick fix here, although we have a lot of tricks and tips, but such as move your body every hour rather than go for a run, because it might just hurt your knees if you're overweight and got knee problems. So there's tips and tricks, but fundamentally, if we can do a little bit in the 6 areas that I work with, they all interlink and help each other. So it's not that unpleasant to make very tiny changes in your life, because it adds up to a huge difference. So that's I'd say our USP with that. It's fun and easy.
And you're not, exactly. You're not looking at depriving yourself of things. I think that's been such a big sort of, the sort of narrative over the last 20, 30 years. You've got to push yourself hard when you work out, and drive yourself harder and harder, and do it every day. Don't have a single day off. And the food, you're going to cut right back on your food, and you've got to have really boring food and eat salad and stuff like that. I mean, neither me or Ollie do any of that stuff. I love what I eat, and I don't deprive myself of anything. But I don't, I eat certain foods. I eat real food, and absolutely love it, because it is real food rather than being sort of processed food. So yeah, it's not a program where we're talking about depriving yourself of things. Absolutely. It's very much, and also I think the other thing Ollie talks about, about you touched on yourself, Lucinda, about making little practical changes. And what we do in our sessions is, very integrated, very a lot of interaction, and just getting people to start to shift a few simple things that are very easy to implement. And then, of course, as we all know, once you start to make a few changes and you feel the real benefits from it, then it becomes a bigger thing, and you start to unpeel the layer of the onions. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you start to make more changes because you can really feel the benefits of doing it. So it's sustainable.
Yeah, so it is interesting, because it's one of these areas where you used to think that maybe it was slightly out of the realm of HR, that this is what people do out of work, but really this whole holistic, and we work at home and live at home and all those sort of things. It feels like this is something which it does come into our sphere, because we are going to perform better and we're going to be happier, and there's going to be all the things we talked about at the start, if we can help everyone in the organisation to do little steps. But you're saying, but it doesn't have to be massive, out of reach things. It's little, small, healthy activities. And perhaps whether it's educating people, you're saying, whether you get people like yourselves in to do programs, or working with a group of people within your organisation, saying, right, what is our culture, what's our messaging around this, how can we support each other to be healthier, to move more, to eat, sleep, think more positively. So so all of those things. Certainly, I think this is a great topic for us to think, well, how can we help others in our organisation to take responsibility themselves and to apply their own uncommon sense? If they want to get in touch with you guys, do you want to let us know? Obviously, I'll put links in the show notes, but how can people reach out to either or both of you?
So my website is under construction, and hopefully by the time this goes live, it will be operating. But it's Nick Thomas Associates or www.nickthomasassociates.co.uk. You can also find me very easily. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. My company is pretty active on LinkedIn. And you can also take a look at Ollie's website, which he'll mention in a minute, or get in contact with him via LinkedIn as well. So Ollie does a lot on the sort of personal side. He's got a fantastic outdoor sort of facility, wild fit facility in the Surrey countryside. So
wild fit as opposed to CrossFit. That's okay. That's it. Including the name.
It's definitely not CrossFit. It's wild fit, and it's all
wild fit, not wild fit. There's no wild animals then.
There are wild animals.
There can be.
I've got a plastic tiger out there. No, it's wildfitsurrey.co.uk. And it really espouses movement, fun, playfulness, high performance, but also anyone can come and do it. And the key thing is it's all outdoor. And there we get the double whammy of nature. We've got a beautiful 10-acre site all surrounded by the Surrey Hills. And the team building events effectively you can build in, kind of get a little bit of the best of both worlds, because you've got all of that. You've got the team building aspect, which we can build in, but also as well, some of the give some little nuggets as well around the performance and health and wellbeing stuff as well. So there's lots of different varieties of things we can do around that, and Ollie can do.
And actually, it's really nice to get people together, isn't it? Again, in occasions where people are more remote, not working together, so have a reason to get together and do these sorts of things. I used to do quite a lot of that when I was in learning and development, so I can imagine very well how much fun that is. Guys, thank you very much for joining me on this. Sorry, go on, Ollie.
Well, in January as well, we huddle around the campfire as well. So,
I was thinking May, June, July, really, myself.
No. You want to think sort of evolution. You want to think, primal, fire, and this sort of thing. So.
Thank you so much for joining us on the HR Uprising podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Lucinda, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. That was great fun.
I really hope you found this week's episode useful and enjoyable. If you did, perhaps you could recommend us to a friend or colleague, or give us a review on your platform of choice. It really helps new listeners to find us. Now, you can access links to any of the information mentioned in this show via the website www.hruprising.com. Further free resources are also available at www.actus.co.uk. There you can also find out more about our software and training solutions. Finally, why not join our LinkedIn group, the HR Uprising, to share ideas and collaborate with other like-minded people professionals. Thank you for listening to the HR Uprising podcast.